you very much. So, Praveen, we have a next speaker available. Oh, Sandeep.
Hi Abdulji.
Hi, hi, hi. Good morning to you. Is it 12 o'clock, right?
It's a good afternoon here.
Good afternoon. Excellent. Nice to see you again, Sandeep.
Oh,
Thank you.
I'm enjoying the sessions and I can appreciate your marathon effort.
Yeah, no, that's
you know,
okay. No, we used to it now. Now we used to it. Everybody says that. How do you do that? If I don't do that, I'll have a problem.
so it is quite. I mean, your thoughts actually around technology and how are
Yeah,
you reducing the technology friction, right, in strategy.
yeah.
Uh, I like the comment especially about the problem is in the strategy, not in the software.
Strategy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's quite well said from you. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
enjoying the session so far.
Excellent, excellent. So let us take up. So we are on time, maybe four
Yeah,
minutes, no problem. 4 5 minutes, up
yeah,
to 10 minutes, no problem.
yeah.
So we'll take it up, Sandeep.
Wonderful. Yeah,
So let me introduce Sandeep Cardoza. So he's a CFO. So let me give you some briefing. So he's talking about cross-functional execution, aligning sales, operations, IT, and finance with strategy. He talks about real how it is done in the field, irrespective of any framework, methodology, or something. So how it is done. So I would like to really hear how you are doing this, Sandeep, and making your organization good to great. Okay. So Sandeep Cardoza is a CFO at Datco Tenant LLC with over 19 years of progressive experience. He leads finance, logistics, supply chain, and IT operations, driving digital transformations, performance management, and strategic planning. Throughout his tenure, he implemented tools like BI, cash management systems, aligning financial insights, and also business growth initiatives. So, welcome, Sandeep. If you can introduce yourself, this is the summary, and then take it from here. Yeah.
sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abdulji, once again. Thank you for the opportunity here. I'm the CFO at Datco Tenant. I am a close to 20 plus years experience in finance. But the role has been evolving such that CFOs are not sitting in the only finance office, but as you can see from my profile, and the business has also recognized that, and my responsibility and my activities have been expanding since then, right? So if you can jump into the presentation, I'm not sure if my screen can be seen now, Abdulji.
Yeah, that's a trick part. Please, instead of let us not waste time. So, almost the sharing screen. Yeah, we can see it. Luckily,
Perfect.
yes,
Perfect.
perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So through the presentation, obviously, I'm going to talk more about execution from the perspective of a practitioner. Yeah. Let's dive into it. Right. So once again, good afternoon, everyone. 75% of the cross-function teams are dysfunctional. Right. This was research backed in 2015 by Benham Tabrezi. A decade has passed. Things would have been definitely improved, would be our assumption. However, a recent study from McKinsey confirms the continuation of the same challenges. And we find this same thing in our businesses also. One of our core criteria highlighted for the dysfunction was misalignment with companies' corporate goals. Teams are hurt by unclear governance, a lack of accountability, by goals that are not lack specificity, and by organizations' failure to prioritize the success of cross-function projects. In time we have, I would like to take a step back and understand the formation of corporate goals and connection to execution and various functions. As my profile says, I'm not a corporate strategy guru, but a practitioner. I have examined our practices in our businesses, especially in Datco Tenant, and then sought frameworks to better communicate those ideas. I'm willing to share what I have learned, and I hope you will find it useful. I would like to address the execution topic in three three points in the agenda, what you can see here. So most companies struggle with formulating a winning strategy. So we'll cover the same in defining the winning strategy. Earlier in our introduction, when Abdulji mentioned about the complexity in strategy, we'll try to break it down and see from practical lens how that can be defined, and especially in context of cross-functional execution. What are the fundamental flaws of connecting strategy and execution, right? So that's what we'll address in the point 2. And lastly, in cascading strategy across functions, we'll cover where traditional logical flow breaks down. So these are the 3 points I would like to cover in my presentation. Right. Defining a winning strategy. Strategy is like a raindrop in a desert. Before they hit the ground, they evaporate, creating little or no effect. So what are the characteristics of a winning business strategy? While this presentation is ultimately about execution, let's first take a step back. Mission defines who you are and why you are here. It should specify your firm's core business. Defining your core business is difficult but crucial, as it provides clarity on what you will and will not do. I would like to narrate incidents actually within our organization also. When you ask business manager what your core business is, you won't be surprised if you hear 10 different answers. We would expect that it should be pretty straightforward, but that's always a challenge. Yeah. So let's look at through the lens of a cross-function execution. If our core business is not able to define from our business leaders, how the cross-function teams will be able to define them, right? So the next slide, what you will see is a simplification of the strategy thought process. We spent a whole day yesterday talking about how the strategy formulation will work, but sometimes it is lost in translation with many cross-functional leaders. And hence I have tried to simplify it in this next framework, right? So defining a winning strategy. A winning strategy provides a clear and a coherent answer to 4 questions, right? 2 of these questions define the arena where you will play, and the next 2 define the capabilities or the competitiveness, how you will win, right? Under where you will play, whom do you serve is a very critical question. Who is your customer? Do we truly know who our customer is? I once asked a salesperson in our organization. We are being a distribution organization. We have our sales team being the core part of our strategy and our functions, and we have a debate in our organization about who our customer is really, right? And is everyone our customer, right? So sometimes the salesperson definition is yes, customer who is willing to pay is our customer. But do your cross-function team truly understand? Do you know who the customer isn't, right? I mean, we just heard also in the previous session, strategy is all about making choices. Yeah. Internally within our business, we define them as key accounts, right? Who are the key accounts and where we should pursue our key accounts from, right? A clear strategic segment is also very important. So identifying your primary customer segments, avoid the trap of serving everyone, right? Strategy clarifies demand focus, right? Visualize the buying journey. Picture yourself in your customer's shoes to understand their needs and frustrations. Do we truly know who our customer is? Yeah, that's what will be defined there. Avoid the trap of serving everyone. Yeah. What do we provide? When we move to what do we provide, defining the product scope. What do we offer? And what do we intentionally not offer? This choice significantly defines your supply chain and procurement policies. This is where the choice and the trade-offs become critical. You can't be everything to everyone. What is our value proposition? Clarify which attributes matter most to the customers, whether it is product, price, access, service, and connectivity. If the sales team isn't clear, they might assume price is all we sell on. If the operation team isn't clear, they might bend backwards for every single customer. Determining what must be true for this value to be delivered consistently, not just what is currently true, is very crucial. Value must be differentiated and meaningful. A strategy that is not distinct isn't a strategy at all, right? And lastly, on the what is our operating model, this is where everything comes together. The orchestration of your strategy is where things will be very quite evident over here. How we deliver value proposition through operational excellence or product leadership or customer intimacy, the execution capability must be aligned, right? It's very critical, actually. That's what we see in our organization. If that is not defined, you will hit roadblocks. Acknowledge and manage uncertainty. No operating model is perfect, predictable. So especially during the current world of tariffs, and uncertainties and supply chain crisis, resilience matters the most. Is the buying process ideal? Looking from the customer's perspective, imagine yourself as a buyer and feel the friction. Strategy is about what should be true and not just what is true. Very, very important way to have a real footing on what's going on in the business to determine and address these questions, especially for cross functional teams. They need to understand their perspective also. Most of the time what happens is the strategy is communicated through a very large deck or a strategic initiative, and we fundamentally are not able to connect that with what the strategy is all about. Where do we play and how do we win? Moving to the next slide. So, defining a winning strategy, another perspective would be most companies drift into a default future. You can see on my slide here. So, most companies have strategy, right? I mean, that's whether it is written down or not, right? Because it is evident from the actions of the organization. And if you are on your path, you will notice that it will lead to growth, right? Whether it is a 3% growth or a 2% growth or a 5% growth, it will lead to some growth, but not necessary. A future by default is rarely a future that is desired, right? So if you look at this timeline versus the growth which you want to charter, you want to see where should I start, right? Most of the organization, and especially on the cross functional leadership, they assume the strategy is a complex, a very intellectual pursuit of what we should do, what we should not do. And there is a lot of confusion within the business organization, especially in the medium and smaller organization, right? And most companies drift towards a default future, one that feels safe but that rarely is desirable. The default future is where we are headed if we keep doing what we do now, right? So, as I said, strategy exists in what we do, not just in what you say. Every organization already has a strategy. Surprise, whether it is explicitly written or implicitly practiced. Strategy is revealed through actual choices, whether how the resources are allocated, which customers are served, and what gets prioritized. And this is especially true when it comes to cross-functional. Your operations team, your IT team, your finance team, HR, your sales teams. They are the ones who are practicing and prioritizing these strategies. So cross-functional teams must recognize that they are already part of a strategy through their daily actions and decisions, not waiting for a new strategic initiative to act. Right. Moving to the next point, the trap of no strategy and the power of status quo. Right. So as I talked about in the default future, new leaders often believe they are starting from scratch, which is never true, and that's a dangerous illusion also. The existing pattern of decisions carries significant momentum, right? This is the momentum which is propelling you to the current path, and that's where you will be headed towards. Uh, if there is if there is no strategic initiative or it lacks your choice, right? So the existing patterns and decisions carry momentum, and that takes you forward. And resisting change, and especially hence it will create a resistance of change for you, right? Because most of the cross functional leaders would assume that it is not relevant, right, into what I do actually, right? To change strategy, you must confront current choices and understand how they reinforce current behaviors across departments. So what our leaders should do, or what a leadership in the organization do, right? Or if it's a functional leader or a strategic leader, right? Start with betterment and not perfection, right? Don't wait for a perfect 50-page strategy document, right? You might not have ability to hire major consultants, you might not have the ability to have the state of the art softwares, but what we can do is start looking at betterment, right? Don't aim to craft a perfect strategy from the outset. Instead, pursue continuous betterment. Apply a Pareto's mindset. Identify top 2 or 3 painful gaps between current performance and desired outcomes, right? So what you see in this graph here is there are gaps along the way, right, through your desired path, and you want to craft an altered path for how you want to move forward, right? So this gap analysis is very important actually, in moving you towards the change, or the new path, right? But again, there has to be a sort of a prioritization in that, right? How will you prioritize 2 or 3 painful gaps between your current performance and your desired outcomes, right? Some questions to ask here: what different choices would make so that the gap disappear? Aligning the new choices across function. Check your compatibility and reinforcement, and not contradiction, right? Because especially if on the ground there are things which are happening, you have to ensure that you're compatible with that, and then look at reinforcement of those new strategy for yourself, right? So in each function, integrating choices across the function is very important, right? If each function attempts to fix their own gap without coordination, you risk creating a conflicting strategy, right? So it's very important that cross function teams are not working in silos, right? So the true cross function execution requires integrating choices and improvements which are supported and not sabotaging each other, right? I mean, I think the earlier presenters all talked about a toxic energy, and I especially liked about when he mentioned about it's not if, it's when actually it happens, and how will you deal with it. So that's very important in alignment of your choices, right? So this demands a dialogue, a continuous integration, a strategic trade-off, not parallel plans developed in silos, right? So cross-function execution frequently fails when functions chase local optimization instead of a shared betterment, right? You will find IT has its own direction sometimes, and HR has its own plans and directions, because every leader might have his own thinking of what I can do to make it better. So earlier, Abdulji also talked about the strategy office, right? And having a clarity through that strategy office is very important. So organizational improvements are looked at in a cohesive manner. Yeah. So success lies in collective problem solving, identifying the biggest cross functional pain points and resolving them together. So small wins through betterment build strategic alignment and confidence across teams. So don't wait for a perfect strategy document. Cross-function execution starts at each team level with the choices they will have. Identify your biggest strategy gaps, and together you can make a better one at one step at a time. I have some questions left here for our audience here to think about it, especially our cross-functional leaders, right? And their struggles actually. So obviously, this is not an exhaustive list of questions you may have, but just quickly let's quickly run through them. So how would you describe your strategic segment, right? Do you focus on one or more segments? A gap analysis here is very important, right? In our organization, we continue to do that, right? We look at, okay, if we are selling an application in one segment, can we look at other segments where we can sell a similar applications, right? And this happens as a continuous process in our quarterly meetings, in our discussions with our units, and look at where the gaps lie and when we can fix it, right? Again, because as you all know, the strategy is not a one time exercise, right? It happens on a continuous basis, so evaluating those gaps are very important. The second question we keep asking ourselves is, do we know who our angel and demon customers are, right? Sometimes it's a controversial statement with the sales teams, but it's very important, right? What when you do an analysis, especially matching your the operational efficiencies versus the customer service which you need to provide, right? So that's very important to identify those which are your money losing customers, which are your money making customers, right? Have you made clear and consistent choice as a product scope, right? Are you a generalist, are you a specialist? It's very important so you can manage your service expectation for those customers, right? Is there a clear and consistent choice in the nature of the product, whether you're selling a high end or a low end product, right? Again, to determine how will you manage your operational efficiencies around that, right? Is your value proposition similar for all customers, or different customers have different reasons to come to you, right? We especially see this in miscellaneous sales actually within our organization, right? And how do we package that better, how do we service them better, how do we make sure our key accounts are getting serviced better, right? Do your product and service dominate in any value attributes in the comparisons with your contributes, right? Is there a differentiation, right? How do you make a clear choices of one of the three operating models? Where do you fit in, whether operational efficiency, customer intimacy, product leadership, right? Where do you fit in? It's very very important, right? And are the functional departments focusing on the same operating leadership? We talked about bending backwards to serve a customer who is not a real customer for us, or maybe losing customers, right? So that's very important. uh, I hope this set of questions help you, and crafting your own questions will be very important for you to help you with your own implementation of strategy, right? Moving to the next point here, right? Connecting strategy and execution. So the critical reality check on how strategy often breaks down within the organization, right? uh, there is a famous Roger Martin quote actually: if you show me a company where the planners are different from the doers, I will show you company where what gets done is different from what was planned, right? I love this quote actually. It captures a fundamental flaw in what we observe in many businesses, and when we reflect on sometimes our businesses also, right? So when people who craft the strategy are disconnected from those responsible for execution, yeah, the results are almost guaranteed to diverge from the original intent, right? Planners may design elegant strategies, right? But unless they are deeply embedded in the realities of day-to-day operation, the constraints, the workflow, the frontline customer realities, those plans often become irrelevant and the moment they hit the ground, right? So it is that their mental model, incentives and priorities are often misaligned, right? So in a high performing organization, the gap is closed either because the planners and the doers are the same people, right? And or if connecting strategy means the different functions, sales, operations, IT, they are co-creators and co-owners, right? And so we'll explore that in the next few slides of how we can bring the real world execution of what's happening on the plans, about adapting the motion, right? The continuous feedback loops which are very important. And this happens when the doers, the people who are executing the strategy choices, have a clear voice and trust in the strategy, right? So I have put some points here and we'll go through them one by one, right? So one of the critical and probably some of the controversial statement with in our finance culture is actually, as a training always defines, that business is there to create shareholder value, right? But let's take a step back and think about it, right? And so where the actual value is getting created, right? So our focus have to be stretched from a strategy document to the real world where the value is created and lost, right? So the fundamental idea here is that the customer must be the center of your strategy, right? Too often companies claim that they are customer centric, yet their decision from product features to pricing, from internal process to incentives, are designed with shareholders expectation or internal conveniences in mind, right? But as the slide states, right, to truly create shareholders value, we must prioritize customers above shareholders. That's not a philosophical, it's a practical, because of the following reasons, right? In terms of customer loyalty, Customer loyalty is what drives repeat business and referrals, right? And that's one of our key account definition, right? Whether are you getting repeat business from the same customer, right? Is he referring you to other customers, right? Is he referring your other products? It's That's very important actually, right? So your key accounts can grow larger, and it's very important to have that customer loyalty in place for that, right? Empowered employees who are trusted and trained to solve customer problems become strategic assets, right? This is a fundamental part in our business, right? Empowering our employees and how they make and solve customer problems, right? So the shareholder value, the ultimate metric of for many organization, and it has to be true, is mostly a lagging indicator. It reflects where there has already happened as a result of delivering value to our customers, right? So shareholder value is a result of smart strategy and great execution. It cannot be strategy in itself, right? So putting the customer at the center means building a cross-function strategy around their needs, right? Ensuring your sales, operations, IT, and finance are not just aligned to internal KPIs, but customer outcomes, right? I often ask our functions actually, right? Okay, we have done all our functional goals, but how come we have not achieved our corporate goal, right? Is there a significant mismatch between our corporate goals and functional goals, right? So measuring what matters to the customer is very important. Are our systems, workflows, and budgets make it easier to serve them or harder, right? Customer problems, are people empowered to take those solutions to solve the customer's problem, right? Or do they stifle them, right? So when customer wins, everyone else does too, including shareholders. Moving to the next slide. Another clear distinction on planning and strategy, right? So this is a truly for one of our cross functional leaders, right? And how they take a back seat actually when it comes to strategic planning, right? And are always switched on in terms of doing, right? So it's important that planning is not an alternative to strategy, right? Planning strategy are not interchangeable. Planning helps us to manage the known, the routines, the budget, the resources. Our cross-functional leaders are very comfortable in this arena. But strategy is about navigating the unknowns, right? Making the market shifts, competitors response, and customers change directions, right? So there is a lot of uncertainty when it comes to strategy. Now, many operational teams tend to be skeptical when they hear the word about strategy. Why? Because what they experience on the ground often feels like a mismatch with what is articulated in the boardrooms. Plans are clear, but strategy feels vague, right? They might ask, how do we actually implement this? Or how will we hold this up in the real world? And that skepticism is valid because planning is about comfort, defining tasks, assigning resources, and creating predictable outcomes. But strategy demands coming something different, right? It is a comfort with uncertainty. It asks us to make bold choices where there are no guarantees. It is about committing to a direction when we don't fully control every outcome. Here's a powerful way to think about it, right? And this came across in one when I was discussing with one of our financial analysts, right? And his argument was, okay, Sandeep, how come we always match our cost but never make sure that we manage to get our revenue from, so the budget is always somewhere here or somewhere there actually, right? Your forecast accuracies are always not aligned, but when it comes to cost, they are always predictable. How does that happen, right? Yeah. uh, my answer was to him was, revenue is determined by the customers, right? So the customer is in the driving seat there and not our planners actually, right? And customer always comes with a question mark. They can switch, they can delay, they can cancel your orders or demand more, right? But cost, however, is largely within our controls. We can plan it, predict it, and structure it, right? So planning can give you cost disciplines, right? But strategy is what helps you earn the revenue in the first place. By winning the customer choice, they say your strategy is going to be continuously adaptive in nature, right? You don't set it once and forget it. Yeah, you keep revising it as conditions change. Our job then is to help the operation, sales, and finance teams to work together, not just to follow the plan, right? Because it's just not motions, where your strategy is going to get executed, right? So the crucial lesson here for functional leader is, if your instinct is, if only they would follow if only they would follow my plans, right? I mean, every functional leader, if you speak to, he has some ideas and some thoughts, right? But that's a big red flag in my view, right? It signals one directional, one flawed view of execution, right? The real strategy isn't merely of getting to those to getting to those plans, but a shared strategy is flexible enough to remove your cross functional, and achieve your cross function realities. Next slide. So in terms of the another key aspect actually which we should think about it is, customers don't experience your strategy, right? They experience your people, right? So customers, the quote captures the central idea behind the slide, right? Strategy is not something that exists only in documents or dashboards. It's something customers encounter through your people and products, right? So the bold line on the slide, the competition happens at the front line, not at the head office, right? It's very important, very important for the CEO and the strategy office to keep it in mind, right? uh, right, so it is critical shift in mindset for the leadership team, right? So customers aren't evaluating our strategy frameworks or our vision statements. They judge us based on how well the front line delivers value, right? Through every product feature, every conversation they have, every delivery experience they have, right? So these principles highlight a crucial truth, right? Sustainable competitive advantage is built where your organization meets the customer, not in the boardroom, nor in the annual strategy offsite, but in everyday decisions and behaviors of your people across sales, operations, service, and logistics, right? And that's what leads us to the second key point here, right? The job of the head office is to enable, not overshadow the front line, right? This means building systems, culture, and strategy structures that empower frontline teams to win in the market. It's not about rigid top-down controls. It is about dynamic bottom-up enablement. And I can vouch for that in terms of in our organization, right? How our head office actually manages that, gives us a free hand actually in terms of how things happen, right? The empowerment cultures is sort of a top-down culture, from the head office, to your from the boardroom to the management and down to the frontline organization, right? So it develops a meaningful culture which empowers your frontline team to win in the marketplace. It's not about the rigid controls, right? So strategy isn't about executed in the broad strokes, right? It is where your salesperson respond to your customers, how your warehouse team prioritizes an urgent order, how your IT resolves a service future or service failure, right? All these micro decisions shape the customer experience, right? So it's not about and it is very important actually, down the line, right? Your third line reporting, or fourth line reporting, and the decisions they make, that determines how your strategy is actually executed, right? So we must invest in what happens in the front line, not just focus on what decided at the top. That brings me to the next point in this, and then the final point in this section is the separation of strategy and execution, right? It's a false divide, right? So great strategies are designed with execution in mind, right? Imagine, I mean, what you can see in the picture, a blueprint converting into a building, right? uh, is there Obviously there are differences in terms of execution, but you would expect that it to come to life. It's important to have a singular thought process. So splitting execution and strategy is not a sort of a, it's uh, into logical industrial activities is not the reason, right? So great strategies are not theoretical constructs, right? So they are designed with implementation in mind from the very beginning. So let's unpack how that we see in our organization also, right? So treating strategy as thinking and execution as doing, we inadvertently damage the hierarchy, right? We create a hierarchical organization where the doers and the thinkers are different, right? It disempowers people on the ground, right? They don't feel ownership over the strategy, right? And when you see things don't get executed, what happens actually, right? Blame games, right? So when things go wrong, planners blame the poor execution and the executors blame flawed strategy, right? So the mindset shift is required here, right? What is more important is execution, except it is the same as strategy. It is no two different things actually, right? And every strategic choice is a hypothesis. It lives or dies through actions. If something is implementable, is it a strategy? Is it truly a strategy? Right? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. Right? Again, I refer here to Roger Martin, actually, who has suggested in his book, choice chartering, right? And it felt quite a a word to use it in the presentation today is so the strategy versus execution, but just a blend of two things together, right? So defining it clearly, coordinated choices across the organization, and committing to act on them together, right? So there is no such thing as a good strategy poorly executed. A strategy that isn't executed is simply isn't. So that brings me to our the final section, the third point, in terms of cascading strategy across functions, right? Uh, so what happens is generally is our assumption is that, oh, it's such a logical flow, right? Oh, we have a vision, we have a strategy, and then let's create an object functional objectives and KPIs to monitor them, and voila, we have a we have cascaded our strategy across functions. Okay, that looks quite tidy and well structured on paper, but in practice, however, there are deep implications we need to confront, right? So the model assumes that strategy is formulated at the top, and typically at the head office or in corporate planning, and functions are merely the doers, right? That's what we saw in the previous slides also. Typically at who are expected to translate strategy into execution, but the logic creates a gap. It's a disconnect between the intention and impact, and this often leads to what is referred to as a buying process, right? That's years of, let's buy our let's get our functions to buy into the process of strategy, right? But think about it, right? Buying does not is not the same as ownership, right? You can't simply send strategy downstream and expect the departments to merely nod along, right? If people responsible for executions aren't involved in shaping the strategy, there will be inevitable feel it is imposed upon them. uh, so the important thing here in this section, what we are going to address is taking a human centric view, right? Imagine, picture yourself in as a head of operations, IT or finance, right? And you receive sort of a dictated strategy, right? Without your team inputs, how do you feel, right? And how would you be told that, okay, now align your KPIs, yeah, to these action plans? Naturally, you will tend to have some resistance. Naturally, you'll tend to have some questions around your head, right? How would this reflect in what we are seeing on the ground, right? The ground realities are so different from what this document talks about, right? Why were we not consulted, right? Or why are we simply expected to make it work, right? So that's why the true strategy execution just isn't just cascading; it is co-creating, right? Making sure that the strategy planning is not just pushed down to the execution level, but they are the ones closest to the customers, and hence they are involved, closest to the constraints, right? They are the ones who are going to execute it, right? So we'll address that in the next few slides about how that can be coming alive for our execution plans, right? So when function helps to create the strategy, alignment is natural, right? When they are merely asked to buy in, resistance is inevitable, right? So this is a typical strategy implementation framework which you would have come across, right? Most of the frameworks boil down to this 5 points actually when it comes to a cost functional execution. But what I want to obviously describe what is here, and then make give them a choice lens, in the subsequent slides. Right. So let's reframe through the choices lens. Right. So if you look at the direction and the direction and the goals, right, what are the directions and the goal selecting process, right? Rather than breaking down into functional actions after it's defined, involve the functions early in the sense making process, right? Strategy becomes a more realistic and executable when frontline insights inform strategic goals from the very outset, right? uh, when it comes to operational teams, right, our sales and our logistics teams, right, it's where the actual doing is happening, right? In our organization, what we do is, I mean, when we are setting our goals, we have a combination of top down and bottom up, right? So you are involving them at every step of the way, right? Instead of just assuming that just dictating a goal or setting a target for your sales teams to go and achieve it, right? So what does it do is actually it creates sort of a operational realities, and which actually shapes your strategy, right? Makes it more executable, right? Sales and logistics are not just executors in this scenario, right? They are the sensors and the contributors, right? And so it is very, very important to make the room for feedback, right? Especially when it comes to the feedback could be of many types, right? So what is another initiative what we are planning in our organization, and many manufacturers are already in line with that, is the quality programs, right? Do the operational teams have enough quality built into their functions or into their processes, which is very also very important. It creates auto feedback loop and make sure that there is an alignment between that, right? When we move to our support processes, right, support functions, right, often treated as back office, these functions are actually strategic enablers, right? So finance often treated as back office, right? And it is no longer actually sort of a back office function any longer, right? It should have what it is building, actually building the systems flows, right? Supporting strategic choices, right? HR is also defining and the talent which is required to execute the strategy, right? When it comes to evaluation and control, actually we saw throughout yesterday and today in the beginning of the presentation about balanced scorecard. And I think so I saw one of the comments also that there are hundreds and thousands of examples, tens and thousands of examples of implementation of that, right? And how it plays a very important role when it comes to monitoring compliance, right? And whether it is a continuous learning, actually the KPIs, the dashboard, the feedback loops should also be co-designed across the function, ensuring that they reflect both the strategic intent, the execution and the execution realities, right? And one of the fundamental portion of what we define as the soft skills or the culture of the organization, the organization behavioral process, right, which includes your culture, your leadership, your incentives, right? And that is where the alignment truly takes place, right? So if you I'm reminded about Charlie Munger's quotation here, right? Show me the incentives and I will show you the outcomes, right? So there is a deep connect there in terms of how your rewards and your recognitions are in place versus what is actually aligned. So is there a conflict between these two things? That's very important for the leadership to take a cognizance of that, right? Is it truly aligned, actually, right? Because these elements must be intentionally shaped with teams, not imposed upon them, right? That means shared values, mutually agreed norms, and collective accountability, right? So the big message and takeaway here is, don't think of cascading as pushing strategy down the ladder, right? Think of it as a building a unified platform together, right? With functions as equal participants in shaping and owning the direction of your strategy, right? I'm just being cognizant about the time. In terms of I think I have another 5 minutes or so. Let me just quickly. I have just a couple of more slides to talk about it, right? So the strategy implementation framework, right? Looking from the strategic lens, actually we touched upon quite a few points earlier, but just to summarize them now here is distributed decision making authority, right? So have your the second line manager, the third line manager, fourth line managers, right? are they involved in the decision making framework, right? Or the decisions are all at the top level, right? Embedding these decision making is very important, actually, right? I mean, we see that classically, right? Our logistics teams have the ability to prioritize cost over speed, right? And when the speed is required, they would prioritize that accordingly, right? When and these are very important decisions which functions can make, and allowing them is very important, actually, right? And the context, because they are very closer to the context, right, of how each functional areas overarching strategy through specific lenses, right? And making sure that there is choice involved for them, right? So support functions like HR, IT, finance don't just execute, right, but make choices along the way, right? This means the same strategic intent can manifest across different platforms, right? uh, Again, I mean, we saw during the we are experiencing such a volatile world, COVID now, tariffs, and the change, or VUCA world, what most of them are calling it as, is, emergent strategy development is very important. The framework accommodates the reality that strategy emerges through choices made by those closest to the work, right? Evaluating control processes captures this distributed decisions, creating a feedback loop that can influence and redefine the overall strategic direction, right? So strategy is both cascading down and emerging upwards, right? And the last and the other important point here is empowerment within boundaries, right? So the organization behavior processes establish our culture's structural boundaries within which people can exercise strategic choices rather than the rigid command and control. This fosters a framework where individuals and teams can make autonomous decisions, right? Collectively advance strategic objectives. So the interpretation transforms the framework to a traditional top-down execution model to a more adaptive one, right? Through individual capacity of individuals to influence your strategy, right? So one of the important, and this is something new for me also, but what we are seeing here is actually, how cross-functional teams should be viewed upon, right? So think from what you see in the image here, right? How a pit crew, right, comes together to make sure the race, the car wins the race, right? So in F1, actually, you will see no single function wins alone, right? Either the car wins or loses as one unified team, right? So especially cross-functional teams, if they have a sort of a garage mentality, right, when they are siloed, it creates a challenge, right? So the mentality to be shift to is a sort of a pit crew, right, where demand is synchronization, right? Everyone knows that the specific roles are very important. They know that the overarching goals are very important about this, right? So looking from the perspective of time and speed is very important in actually your achieving your strategic objectives, right? So the system-wide performance is also very important here, right? So we talked about earlier in the side, are functions looking it from more of a functional and siloed strategy, or it is more of an organizational alignment, right? So system-wide performance impact is what we are looking at.
Sandeep, you have few minutes. Huh? Okay.
Sure. I'm just wrapping up. Just a couple last slide. I'm there. Enterprising, metrics in terms of enterprising centric metrics. We talked about that one also, right? So it's just not about judging your, looking from a cost angle, actually, right? So functions are sometimes viewed as cost and not viewed as a team which can propel you to a and create a definitive competitive advantage, right? Just a few questions here, again, sort of a checklist mentality for people here to look at it in terms of how, and this will be available on the slide deck, actually, for you to have a look at it. Just to touch a couple of points here is in terms of culture, leadership behaviors, and incentive systems, actually, are they aligned, right? You may have to question that for yourself, right? Are functional goals linked back to strategic choices, right? Another important one to for you to look at it. Just coming to my last slide here. So execution becomes more of a same thing as strategy. You don't have two different thought processes of execution and strategy, and this is beautifully put by Roger Martin here, right? Just to as I wrap up, I want to acknowledge the sources which I have used here, right? So much of what I have shared today is shaped by the influences of some brilliant works here. And obviously, these are thoughts from these original inventors, and I would definitely recommend you to go through their books. Right, I have drawn heavily from these thinkers because their frameworks help me to understand and communicate what I was experiencing in practice. Right, so I encourage you to go deeper into the original works. They are rich with insights. Right, so that's come to me an end. Thank you very much for good audience.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you sharing your thinking on the strategy. Okay, as a CFO, yeah, thank you very much. And there are some you can just because we run out of time. Okay,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, so yeah, so one just point is I would like to highlight it. Who is the customer instead of what is the customer jobs to be done, as a Clayton Christensen said. The customer is the wrong unit of analysis. It is a job that we must understand. So that is a comment gave by Mihai. Okay. So instead of talking of customer, talk about the job to be done. Uh, Clayton Christensen is a famous professor. Okay, so he talked about that, and yeah.
Yeah. So of course, I mean, so when you have identified a gap, actually taking a customer lens helps the cross-function teams to execute it better. That's the, I mean, that's what I see it in practice, right? In day in and day out, what
Mhm.
our sales teams talk
Mhm.
about it actually, right?
Yeah.
Or what our sales leaders mention about it, right? Or how do you get to your revenue stream, right? So these are of course there are different thoughts, and what happens in practice is actually is my experience which I'm sharing here. Of course, as I rightly said, I'm not a strategy guru here, but these are my few cents what I see it in practice.
So yeah, you are as a practitioner, you share whatever you prefer. Yeah, that's appreciate your time, Sandeep.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. Have a
Thank you.
good time, good day. So
Thank you.
we are about to start the next session. Okay, so we
Thank
are
you
on
very much.
time. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for joining the session, and